How dare you just show up here after all these years? I demanded, blocking the doorway as I glared at my ex-husband Dean standing on my porch. I hadn't seen or heard from him in over a decade, not since the divorce 12 years ago. Marianne, please, just hear me out, Dean pleaded, his voice calm despite my obvious anger. I made mistakes, I know, but I've changed now. I just want a chance to reconnect with you and with our daughter Eliza. I scoffed, crossing my arms defensively. A chance? You had your chance, Dean. You abandoned us, abandoned your own child. Eliza doesn't even know you. As far as she's concerned, she has no father. Dean looked pained, his shoulders sagging. I regret that. I do. Leaving you both was the worst decision of my life. But I've gotten my act together now. I have a good job, a nice place to live. I can offer Eliza opportunities. All I'm asking is that you let me get to know her. I studied Dean closely, conflicted emotions swirling within me. He seemed sincere, his green eyes hopeful behind his stylish glasses. And despite myself, a small part of me still cared for him. We had been childhood sweethearts once, married at 18 in a whirlwind of young love. Back when I thought we'd be together forever, until he shattered that illusion. Please, Marianne, Dean repeated gently. I just want to make things right. I bit my lip, considering having a father might benefit Eliza, filling the painful gap left by Dean's abandonment. But could I trust him again after all the hurt? Before I could respond, Eliza's voice rang out behind me. Mom, who is that? I turned to see my daughter descending the stairs, her brown eyes, Dean's eyes, fixed curiously on the stranger at our door. She looked so innocent, so vulnerable. Could I really expose her to a man who might only wound her again? But keeping them apart now seemed impossible. Eliza, I said slowly, this is your father. Eliza's mouth fell open in shock. I watched the play of emotions on her face, confusion, curiosity, even a flash of something that might be yearning. The image of the father she'd always longed for but never known. Dean stepped forward eagerly. It's wonderful to finally meet you, Eliza. You've grown into such a lovely young woman. Eliza shifted awkwardly. Thanks. Nice to meet you too, Dad. The word sounded foreign, yet hopeful on her lips. I tensed, hovering between them like a gatekeeper. Could I really stand by while Dean waltzed back into our lives? But Eliza was clearly intrigued by him, as I once had been by the charming boy who stole my heart at 16. Dean turned to me with an eager smile. Why don't we go out for dinner, the three of us? My treat. It would give us a chance to talk, get to know each other again. Before I could protest, Eliza broke in. That sounds awesome. Can we go, Mom, please? Her pleading eyes decided me. However misguided, she deserved a chance to know her long-lost father. But I swore Dean would never hurt my little girl, not if I had anything to say about it. I sighed, fixing Dean with a warning glare to let him know I'd be watching him. All right, dinner it is. But don't think charming Eliza means I've forgiven you. Dean just grinned, victory glinting in his eyes. Wouldn't dream of it, Marianne. This is just the first step. Somehow I knew then, this was only the beginning. Dean was worming his way back into our lives, and I feared nothing good could come of it. I watched Eliza surreptitiously, a knot forming in my stomach. She sat next to Dean in the bustling restaurant, hanging on his every word. He was charming her, just like he once charmed me, with compliments and stories and promises of a bright future. And Eliza was falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. So you really live in a beach house? She asked, fork poised mid-bite. That's so cool, Dean chuckled. It's just a small place, but yeah, right on the shore. Maybe you can come visit sometime if your mom says it's okay. I bristled. Allow my daughter alone with this virtual stranger? Not likely, but Eliza's eyes were shining. Could I, Mom? It would be so amazing to spend time together. My stomach twisted at her innocent eagerness. Dean didn't deserve her admiration after walking out on us. I opened my mouth to object, but Dean shot me a subtle warning look. Clenching my fist under the table, I forced a tight smile. We'll see if Dean and I think you're ready later on. Eliza's face fell slightly, but Dean squeezed her hand. It's all right, we still have these visits to look forward to. In fact, why don't you come stay with me this weekend? The knot in my gut tightened. An entire weekend alone under Dean's influence over my dead body. But again, Eliza spoke up first. Really? I'd love that. She grasped Dean's hand, smiling brightly. Thanks, Dad. This means the world to me. I shifted uneasily. Eliza seemed almost infatuated, clearly craving a connection with her long-lost father. Was I being selfish, letting my resentment toward Dean cloud my judgment? With Eliza looking at me pleadingly, I reluctantly agreed to consider overnight visits in the future, my protective instincts clamoring warnings I tried my best to ignore. Over the next few weeks, Eliza started spending more and more time with Dean, often returning home tired but thrilled with stories of dinners out and shopping trips. I wanted to deny her these outings, but her obvious joy made me hold my tongue. Let her enjoy Dean's presence, I told myself, even as my mistrust nagged at me. Then the changes began. Eliza grew quiet, withdrawn, often picking at her food. Dark circles appeared under her once vibrant eyes. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed me off as just tired from staying up late talking with Dean. But my worst fears were confirmed when I caught sight of bruises on her wrist one night, faded but still visible. Rage boiled up inside me and I saw red. Had Dean hurt her? Used his charm to take advantage of his own naive daughter? I confronted Eliza, who insisted the bruising was an accident, though she refused to meet my eyes. My hands shook with the urge to strangle Dean, to make him pay for whatever he had done. But I restrained my fury. Dean had won Eliza over with his act. She would just defend him now. No, I needed more proof before I exposed him for the monster I was certain he was. So I bided my time, comforting my increasingly withdrawn daughter as best I could. And I watched Dean like a hawk for the tiniest slip-up to confirm my suspicions. He would not get away with hurting my little girl again. I would see to that, if it was the last thing I ever did. She's severely anemic, the doctor said, his forehead creased with concern as he studied Eliza's chart. Dangerously so. We need to start aggressive iron treatments right away. I squeezed Eliza's limp hand, blinking back tears as she lay pale and weak in the hospital bed. When I'd found her collapsed on the bathroom floor after another weekend with Dean, my heart had stopped. Rushing her here, the doctors discovered her rapid and inexplicable blood loss. Now the doctor met my gaze, his eyes troubled. Anemia this acute often indicates an underlying chronic health condition. We'll need to run more tests to uncover the cause. My breath caught. What if Eliza had some terrible, undisclosed illness? Bile rose in my throat as I thought of Dean knowing something and keeping silent. I knew he was ruthless, but risking Eliza's very life seemed beyond belief. Eliza's eyes fluttered open and she gave me a wan smile. Hi, Mom. Sorry you have to see me like this. My chest tightened, anger and anguish twisting inside me. It's not your fault, honey, I soothed, smoothing back her hair. Over her head, I exchanged a knowing look with the doctor before he discreetly exited. Settling into the chair beside Eliza's bed, I steeled myself. Sweetheart, does Dean know you haven't been feeling well lately? Based on her worsening health, he must have noticed something amiss. Eliza bit her lip, avoiding my gaze. Well, yeah, I mentioned the headaches and dizziness a few times. I leaned forward intently. And what did he say? Eliza shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Just not to worry about it, that he didn't want me making a fuss when we had plans. Red flashed before my eyes. He knew she was unwell and still dragged her out for his own amusement. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. What kind of father ignored his child's suffering? Just then, a knock preceded Dean, strolling casually into the room, as if visiting his daughter in the hospital was an everyday occurrence. Hey, kiddo. Your old man got here as quick as he could. How are you feeling? I shot to my feet, body trembling. How does she look, Dean? She's severely anemic, and they're running more tests. I stepped close, glaring into his impassive face. You knew she was sick. She told you her symptoms, and you did nothing. Dean lifted his hands placatingly. Marianne, let's not overreact. I just thought it was normal teen stuff. Eliza said she was fine to go out. He smiled gently down at our daughter. Isn't that right, honey? Eliza bit her lip, glancing anxiously between us. My heart cracked, sensing her inner conflict between the father she suddenly adored and the mother who had always protected her. Taking her hesitance as affirmation, Dean turned to me with an easy grin that I wanted to claw off his smug face. See, Marianne, you shouldn't jump down my throat. I've always had Eliza's best interests in mind. Now, do we know yet what's causing this little iron issue? His casual tone ignited my fury. He was using Eliza for his own gain. I was sure of it now. and I would not rest until I uncovered exactly what vile scheme he was playing at. For Eliza's sake, Dean had to go down. No matter what it took, I would make him pay for daring to manipulate and endanger my only child. Daddy's little girl was about to bring his whole world crashing down around him. I swore that much as I silently vowed bloody revenge. The shrill ringing of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it, pulse racing. Late-night calls were never good news. "Hello?" I mumbled, already swinging my legs out of bed. "Miss Collins?" said an unfamiliar female voice. "This is Mercy Hospital. Your daughter Eliza was just admitted." The rest of her words faded to a buzz as icy fear gripped my heart. Eliza hospitalized? Oh God, what had Dean done to her? I barely remember the frantic drive, running red lights with sirens blaring behind me. I blew past the nurse's station and found Eliza's room, only to stop short at the sight of her. My vibrant, shining girl lay motionless in the stark hospital bed, her skin so pale it nearly matched the sheets. Dark circles like bruises underscored her closed eyes. Tubes and wires snaked around her, connecting to beeping machines. I rushed to her side, grabbing her limp hand as panicked tears streamed down my face. "Eliza, oh honey, what happened to you?" A gentle voice spoke behind me. "You must be Mary Ann. I'm Dr. Lowe." I turned to see a tall doctor reviewing a chart. Her grave eyes met mine. "Your daughter was brought in exhibiting severe symptoms, fainting, fatigue, heart arrhythmia. We ran tests. And," I rasped through the lump in my throat, "Eliza is suffering from acute iron deficiency anemia. Her hemoglobin levels are dangerously low. We've started her on intravenous treatment, but we need to determine an underlying cause." I squeezed my eyes shut as fury seared through me. I knew the cause. The man who had waltzed into our lives 3 months ago, spinning false charm and hollow promises. This was on Dean's head for poisoning my daughter against me. I was sure of it. A groan from the bed drew my attention. Eliza was stirring, her eyes blinking slowly open and squinting against the harsh fluorescent lights. "Mom?" she mumbled. "Where?" I smoothed her hair back, trying to keep my raging emotions at bay. "Shh, baby, you're in the hospital. You're very sick, but you're going to be okay." At least once Dean paid for this, I vowed silently. Over the next few days, Eliza remained hospitalized, as doctors ran test after test. I barely left her side, except when Dean visited. I would retreat to the hall, watching his false sympathy through the glass as I plotted my revenge. Finally, Dr. Lowe called me into her office, closing the door gently behind us. My heart pounded wildly at her grim expression. Had they uncovered something far more sinister plaguing my daughter's failing health? "Mary Ann, please have a seat," the doctor said. She folded her hands atop her desk. "The test results show Eliza has a genetic blood disorder which inhibits her body's ability to produce hemoglobin. It often remains dormant until adolescence, which would explain why symptoms are manifesting now." I sagged back, relief washing over me mingled with shame. This wasn't Dean's doing after all. My little girl was battling a devastating inherited disease, meaning I was the one who passed this down to her. Overcome, I buried my face in my hands as sobs racked my frame. My poor Eliza. As if her deadbeat father wasn't enough, now her own body betrayed her too? Dimly, I became aware of Dr. Lowe squeezing my shoulder, her voice calmly reassuring me of treatment options, clinical trials, hope. But all I could see was Eliza's wan face, her vibrancy wilting away. And I knew then, no matter what it took, I would move heaven and earth to save my daughter's life. She was all that mattered to me now. Dean, my vengeance, even my pride, I would sacrifice anything for her to thrive once more. Somehow, whatever the cost, I had to make this right. I sagged back in the hard plastic chair outside Eliza's hospital room, exhaustion seeping through every bone. I had barely left her side since learning of her devastating diagnosis 3 days prior, maintaining a constant vigil for my fading girl. Nurses drifted by on quiet rounds, their hushed voices and squeaking shoes the only nighttime sounds. In the solitude, vengeance simmered once more in my gut. Dean should be here sharing this agony over our dying daughter. Instead, he breezed in and out at his leisure, always leaving with some transparent excuse. Other plans, important calls, anything to avoid the grim reality that the child he claimed to care for now withered away before our eyes. My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil, an incoming call from Dean. I declined it, couldn't bear his false platitudes tonight. Sending to voicemail, I started to tuck the phone away when I paused. Maybe it was the desperation born of exhaustion. Maybe just my visceral need to hear the truth in his voice. But some mad impulse made me access the voicemail and set it playing on speaker at low volume. What I heard turned my blood to ice. "Marianne, your unrelenting paranoia is really aggravating." Dean's smooth voice flowed out. "Unrelenting paranoia because I refused to leave Eliza alone with him now?" Red mist clouded my vision. "The girl obviously can't travel or satisfy my associates in her condition. You need to get her functional again if our arrangement is going to work." My mouth fell open and I nearly dropped the phone. Arrangement? What on earth was he talking about? Dread crept down my spine as I continued listening. "I've cleared all my debts. The casino owners are paid in full, but some still want revenge for my past games. They'll be satisfied with one weekend, 48 hours with the girl as collateral." A sinister note entered Dean's tone. "She's quite lovely after all, though the anemia does drain that fetching glow." Revulsion roiled through me, and I clasped a hand over my mouth to trap the scream tearing up my throat. That monster. He had leveraged our daughter to settle his gambling debts? Intended to hand her over to be assaulted and abused? Rage ignited within me, hot as an inferno. I would see Dean suffer 1,000 deaths before I allowed him to lay a finger on my child. This evil could not, would not, prevail. The voicemail ended. For long moments I could only sit trembling, visions of violence flashing behind my eyes. Slowly the protector in me overcame the fury. Strategizing replaced reaction. Dean did not know I had heard this confession. That gave me an advantage. I drew in a long breath, mind racing. Then I stood smoothly and crept to Eliza's room. My sleeping girl was warm in my arms as I gently lifted her. Her head lolled onto my shoulder, breath faint against my neck. "It's all right, baby," I whispered. "I've got you now. We're leaving this place tonight, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. Your daddy made a big mistake." Eliza nuzzled closer, and my heart ached with bittersweet love. By the time anyone noticed we had gone, we would be miles away and swiftly disappearing. But my vengeance would remain, tracking Dean unseen and unheard like a deadly ghost. For threatening my child, that monster had sealed his fate. And once Eliza was safe, I would descend on that fate like an angel of death intent on ruin. Dean would regret the day he dared cross Marianne Collins and her innocent daughter. I smoothed Eliza's hair back, listening to her faint breathing as she lay curled on the sagging motel bed. We had driven through the night to get far away from Dean and everyone connected to him. Now exhaustion pressed on me, but I couldn't rest yet. I had plans to make and vengeance to exact. Picking up my phone with shaking hands, I texted my friend Carla. "Marianne, I need your help. It's about Dean and Eliza. Can you meet?" Barely a minute passed before 3 bouncing dots appeared. "Carla, what's that bastard done now?" "Just say when and where." Relief rushed through me. I quickly gave her the motel name and room number, hands steadying now that backup was coming. My nerves jangled with urgency to put things in motion before Dean discovered our absence. Soon a soft knock preceded Carla slipping quietly inside, her kind eyes immediately going to Eliza. "The poor thing," she murmured before turning to me expectantly. "What's happened?" In a rush, I told her everything. Dean's charming reappearance, Eliza's declining health, and finally the voicemail revealing my ex-husband's nefarious intentions toward our daughter. Carla listened silently, her expression morphing from concern to outrage. "That snake," she seethed once I had finished. "He deserves to rot for threatening sweet Eliza's innocence." She gripped my hands firmly. "What's the plan? How can I help take him down?" I squeezed her hands gratefully, my first true smile in days curving my lips. With Carla on my side, Dean didn't stand a chance. Over the next hours, we schemed relentlessly, fueled by vengeance and black coffee from the corner store. Carla would reach out through the local women's shelter to find others Dean had abused over the years, rallying them to speak against him. Meanwhile, I worked with Eliza's school principal, Mr. Jensen, to cut off Dean's access by getting Eliza temporarily withdrawn for medical leave. It would protect my still fragile girl while buying me time to coordinate with detectives I prayed would take my story seriously. By the time exhaustion finally overtook us, the plan was in motion. Carla departed to begin contacting Dean's former victims. I walked her out, collapsing in her embrace on the sidewalk. "It's going to be okay, Marianne," she soothed. "That monster will get what he deserves, I swear to you. We'll make damn sure of it." I squeezed my eyes shut against a sudden upwelling of tears. However this played out, I could not have asked for a better friend through the darkness. When I returned inside, Eliza was awake and watching me silently from the bed. I perched next to her, gently stroking her hair. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart," I whispered. Her responding smile, though wan, filled me with quiet resolve. Dean had no comprehension yet of the danger coming for him now that he had provoked a mother's fury. But he would learn that mistake soon enough. For Eliza, no risk was too great, and no limits would restrain me. My vengeance would blaze a path of ruin through Dean's life, and I would watch it burn with righteous fire in my eyes. He had no idea of the hell coming for him now, but he would. Oh, he would. I strode into the crowded community center, adrenaline firing through my veins. The empty seat at the front beside Carla mockingly awaited its guest of honor, the man I intended to crucify today. I gazed out at the audience gathered at my request, faces Dean had wronged throughout the years mingling with the curious and concerned. Reporters hovered near the back, alerted to a major announcement regarding a prominent local businessman. It was time to take Dean's glossy public image and rip it to shreds, exposing the monster that lurked beneath a charming facade. As the appointed hour hit, Carla stood and took the mic. "I want to thank you all for coming today." Her steady voice belied her nerves for what came next. "By now you're aware this gathering concerns allegations against Mr. Dean Collins. I have here documentation and signed affidavits from victims alleging fraud, abuse, and worse perpetrated by this man." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as she continued detailing Dean's suspected crimes. A tide of vindication rose in me, imagining Dean's growing panic when he realized his sins were coming to light. Right on cue, the doors banged open to reveal Dean striding down the center aisle, polished veneer firmly in place, though his smile appeared strained. "Marianne, what insanity is this?" He grasped my shoulders, but I shook him off with disgust. "You disappeared with Eliza without warning, and now these outrageous accusations." His voice lowered. "Think of our daughter and call this circus off immediately." Red mist descended over my vision. "How dare you invoke Eliza after threatening her innocence to settle your debts?" I snarled. Dean paled. What are you talking about?" He scanned the hostile crowd, smile slipping. "Marianne, please, let's speak privately. This is all a misunderstanding." "There's nothing to misunderstand." My voice resonated with icy authority. "You used Eliza as a pawn by leveraging access to her for your gambling associates. I have a voicemail proving your vile intentions." With a flick of my phone, his slippery voice echoed from the speakers, baldly discussing Eliza as though negotiating a business transaction. Howls erupted from the audience along with cries for arrest and retribution. Dean physically recoiled as all pretense of innocence fell away, revealing naked panic. That recording is fabricated. I would never harm Eliza. She's my blood." He backed away slowly. The predator turned prey. "Marianne, this is insane." Strong hands landed on his shoulders, making him cry out. "That's enough, sir," said a stern-eyed detective I had contacted weeks prior. "You'll need to come down to answer some serious questions about these allegations." As Dean was escorted forcibly from the hall, all sound faded for me. Watching his handsome mask strip away felt almost anticlimactic after so long fearing his shadow. But relief slowly spread through me, easing months of anguish. It was over at last. Dean's web of lies had trapped him instead of us. "Mom?" A small voice at my elbow drew my gaze. Eliza stood beside me, still slightly pale, but with light returning to her eyes. Without a word, I wrapped her in my arms, tears slipping down both our cheeks. My daughter was safe, the villain exposed. Whatever came next for Dean, justice had been served. With Eliza in my arms, I had everything that mattered. The rest was just aftermath. As the crowd's fury turned to cheerful chatter planning Dean's demise, I smoothed Eliza's hair gently. "Let's go home, baby." Her answering smile filled my heart to brimming. The nightmare was over at last. I watched Eliza closely during her doctor's appointment, wary of any lingering strain after the ordeal with Dean. But my girl was strong, her wit quick and charm shining bright as ever, now that the oppressive weight of Dean's schemes had been lifted. Dr. Lowe reviewed the latest blood work and gave us a reassuring smile. Eliza's hemoglobin levels and overall health have improved remarkably this past month. You responded well to the new treatment plan. Eliza beamed, bouncing excitedly on the exam table's edge. Does this mean I can go back to school soon? Laughing, Dr. Lowe patted her knee. I don't see why not. Your mom and I will discuss specifics, but you seem well enough to ease back into normal activities. As Eliza celebrated under her breath with a fist pump, I felt tears sting my eyes. My little girl really was coming back to me, Dean's poison finally leaching out. When we got home, I had another surprise waiting. Grandma! Eliza cried joyfully, rushing into her grandmother's open arms. Janice smothered Eliza in kisses before pulling back, misty-eyed. Let me look at you, my girl. Seems that nasty man didn't ruin all your shine after all. I squeezed Janice's shoulder, overcome with gratitude that she had dropped everything to support us these past harrowing months. Together we had weathered the storm, with help from dear friends and a bit of justice now served. Over celebratory milkshakes, I caught Janice and Eliza up on recent events, including Dean's financial ruin and multiple criminal charges. They confiscated everything to cover debts and compensation for victims, I shared, not without some smugness. He'll be doing good to avoid serious jail time. Janice gave a satisfied nod before cocking her head. Speaking of justice, there's more you should know. She flicked open a newspaper bearing Dean's scowling mugshot. It seems Panthers got Dean's scent. I read the damning headline with widening eyes. Disgraced businessman attacked by circus animals. My hand flew to my mouth at the bizarre details. Apparently, during transport to his fraud arraignment, a semi carrying exotic animals from a shuttered circus had overturned on the highway. Chaos unfolded as lions, tigers, and other freed beasts converged on responding patrol vehicles, including the caravan transporting Dean. He tried fleeing on foot, but was quickly tapped and mauled by 3 escaped panthers in a field until emergency tranquilizations arrived too late. Graphic photos showed his bloody, ravaged remains being bagged at the grisly scene, steel-gray eyes frozen wide in terror. Slowly I lowered the paper, pulse racing. Around me, the kitchen sounds faded as I stared sightlessly. Cosmic justice had intersected human vengeance, dealing a fatal blow I never could have orchestrated alone, no matter how vindictive my rage. In the end, Dean had succumbed to powers beyond either of our control. I became aware of Eliza squeezing my hand, love and relief shining in her face as she too absorbed the news. Janice wrapped an arm around my shoulders, solidarity passing unspoken between the 2 lionesses who helped raise this remarkable young woman before us. Finally, I squeezed Eliza tight, revelation settling through my soul. The dark storm had passed at last. Our future stood bright with hope, and nothing, not health woes, human monsters, or even wild beasts, could defeat the fierce love we shared as an unbreakable family. Dean was gone for good, and we had not just endured, but triumphed thanks to bonds that crossed space and time. No matter what happened next, we had already won. I smiled softly, watching Eliza chatter with her friends across the garden. We were gathered at Carla's house for a long overdue celebration after everything that had happened. School was back in session, and Eliza had rejoined cheerleading practice, her energy and motivation fully renewed now that Dean's shadow no longer darkened our door. She's blossoming before our eyes. Carla appeared beside me, handing over a brimming glass of lemonade. You both are. I nodded, a bittersweet lump forming in my throat. I can hardly believe it's only been 3 months since everything changed. Since Dean had unexpectedly shown up in our lives again. His intentions may have been malicious rather than paternal, but the aftermath of his brief return had fundamentally reshaped our family. Carla gently bumped my shoulder. Hey, look at me. It's over now, Marianne. Eliza is healthy and thriving, and that monster got what he deserved. I know. I blinked back sudden tears, emotions welling unexpectedly. I'm just so proud of how my girl handled everything. She's the strongest person I know. As if sensing our gazes, Eliza glanced over. The smile she gave me illuminated from within, open, honest, unafraid. My breath caught at this glowing vision of the woman she was becoming. No darkness could extinguish her spirit now. Later, after farewell hugs and promises to meet again soon, I drove us home as pale violet dusk settled over the neighborhood. Eliza leaned against me on the couch as we watched the sky fade to black through the front windows. Mom, she finally murmured into the quiet. Do you think Dad would have hurt me in the end? I wrapped an arm around her, choosing my words carefully. I think desperate people can do terrible things when they lack a moral compass to guide them. Your father lost sight of what matters most in life, things like family and integrity. Eliza considered this quietly. I'm sad I never got the dad I imagined, she admitted after a moment, but also kind of glad I don't have to see him be so awful as he got older. Her wisdom and empathy moved me. I kissed her hair, awash with bittersweet relief. Me too, baby. We had gained hard-won perspective from Dean's schemes, yet lost any fantasies that a father-daughter relationship was still possible. It hurt, but the truth often did, in the process of setting you free. Together we watched the faint stars emerge, ordinary miracles persisting despite humanity's flaws. No matter what burdens weighed me down, gazing at the night sky never failed spark perspective and rekindle hope. Look, Eliza suddenly gasped, pointing skyward. I followed her finger to see a brilliant streak of light blaze across the dark canopy. A meteor vanished as swiftly as it had appeared. Make a wish, I whispered playfully, squeezing Eliza close. She shut her eyes, brow furrowed adorably. In that quiet, suspended moment with my daughter tucked under my wing, I sent up my own wish. For her health, for her happiness, for a life full of light chasing away the shadows. A life where wounds healed into wisdom over time. I blinked open, moist eyes to find Eliza watching me, love shining through her smile. What did you wish for? I asked. She hugged me tight. That we'll always have each other. That's all I really need. Overwhelmed, I held my girl close as she anchored me firmly to what mattered most. The past was gone, the future unknown, but right now we had each other. And in that singular truth, I discovered all the hope and healing I would ever need nestled safe in my arms.
My name is Carrie. I now live with my daughter, Deanna, and her husband Garrett, and their daughter Sarah. This year I turned 70, and it feels like a significant milestone. My husband Matt passed away 3 years ago due to illness, and originally I was living alone until my daughter and her husband invited me to stay with them. "Mom, won't you come live with us?" "What? But wouldn't I be a burden?"
"No, we want to live with Carrie. It's not exactly payback, but we really appreciate everything you've done for us, Carrie. Why don't we all live together happily?"
I was feeling lonely living alone, so I was grateful that they cared so much. Sarah, my first granddaughter, is such a good kid, and I'm living happily now. Feeling the need for a purpose in life, I'm fortunate to be healthy and currently working part-time at the checkout counter of a supermarket. It's a small supermarket, but well loved by the locals and everyone is friendly. Even the young part-timers look up to me, and I have no complaints. However, there is one thing that bothers me. That is, "Oh, working part-time again today, Carrie?" Catherine, welcome. The woman who comes to the supermarket is Catherine, my son Polly's wife. That makes her Deanna's sister-in-law. She got married just before Deanna did and lives a bit far from here. Honestly, I've never gotten along well with Catherine. It seems she didn't think highly of me from the beginning, and she often made snide remarks, even during greetings. "Catherine, let's get along well from now on." Carrie, that's fine. You don't need to bother." "What? You don't need to worry about us, so please don't interfere too much, okay? I'll handle family matters just fine. We don't want any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict, do we? It's stressful for both of us." She put up a wall from the beginning and we were shocked. At the same time, I didn't have a good impression of her. Matt didn't think highly of Catherine either, but Polly seemed quite smitten with her.
"I'm definitely going to marry Catherine,"
he used to say. Polly was a troublemaker since he was young, and we often struggled to handle him. He had behavioral issues at school, and we were frequently called in. Matt initially wanted to discuss it at home, but eventually he gave up. Polly finally got a job and started working, and just when we thought we could relax, he brought Catherine to introduce her to us. Catherine was a strikingly beautiful woman with a flamboyant appearance. On the day of the greeting, I cooked a big meal, but Catherine didn't seem to like it. "I'm not really into greasy food. It seems like some old-fashioned country cooking," she said, hardly eating. Matt was about to yell at her, but we managed to finish the greeting peacefully. We tried to convince them a few times, but they ended up getting married and now live a bit far from here. It was when Matt was still alive that he warned,
"You better be sure about this. Don't come crying to me if something goes wrong."
But Polly was full of unfounded confidence, saying,
"It'll be absolutely fine."
We only saw each other at Christmas gatherings, but ever since I started my part-time job, I happened to run into Catherine at my workplace. That encounter is unforgettable because of how shocking it was. "Oh, isn't that Carrie?" "Catherine, why are you here?" "Why? Isn't that rude to say to a customer?" Sorry, I was just surprised." "And here you are at 70, working as a part-timer. Are you struggling for money? Or have you run out of money to give to your sisters?" Catherine, with her condescending attitude, continued to make snide remarks, taking advantage of the fact that it wasn't busy. Apparently, though they lived a distance away, she just happened to be shopping nearby, and we happened to meet. "No, I started part-time work because I thought it would be fulfilling. Everyone at work is nice and I'm content." Catherine seemed surprised for a moment at my words, but then burst out laughing. "Carrie, don't push yourself. You don't have much time left anyway." I was just stunned by her words, suggesting a person's lifespan so carelessly. As the line at the register started to grow, Catherine left. "Carrie, are you okay?" "Yes, sorry about that. She's my son's wife. I didn't mean to cause trouble. No way. That attitude is unbelievable. No respect for a mother-in-law at all. The part-timer who overheard was visibly upset. I was touched that someone cared about me and thanked her for her concern. Let me know if she comes back. Yes, thank you. I thought it was just a coincidence. They live far away, so I didn't expect to see her for a while. But reality proved harsh. Catherine started coming to my workplace about 3 times a week, deliberately seeking me out to make unpleasant remarks. She even spoke disdainfully about Deanna and Garrett, and as if that wasn't bad enough, she even demanded discounts on the store's products. Oh, Carrie, this deli container's lid is open. Isn't that unhygienic? I'll buy it, so give me a discount. I can't do that. Sorry. Please buy something else. We'll dispose of that one. What? I'm offering to buy it for you. Every time Catherine came to work, the manager would apologize, and she seemed to enjoy his discomfort with a malicious smile. I was on the verge of exploding with anger. It was becoming a nuisance to the workplace, and I didn't want to trouble Deanna and her family. More importantly, for my own dignity, I called Catherine the next day. Catherine, please stop coming to my workplace and causing trouble. If this continues, I will have to take action as a mother-in-law. Catherine laughed mockingly over the phone. Trouble? I'm just worried about Carrie. I wanted to scream at her claim of concern, but I held back and continued calmly. Your actions are a nuisance. I won't tolerate it any longer. What? You think it's wrong for me to worry about Carrie? I don't think I deserve to be treated like this. Unrepentant and even defiant, Catherine frustrated me. Anyway, please stop doing this in the future. Seemingly displeased with my inability to tolerate her any longer, Catherine spat out her last words. Don't act all high and mighty. You bottom-tier old lady who can't do anything but work before hitting the grave. I'll be sure to tell Polly about this. With that, she hung up. True to her word, the next day I received a call from Polly.
What the hell did you say to Catherine, Mom? That's awful!
As soon as I answered, Polly was yelling at me. It's Catherine who's awful.
What are you talking about? You said terrible things to Catherine. She's crying. No matter if you're my mother, I won't forgive this.
Apparently, Catherine had told Polly a fabricated story, making it seem like I had severely scolded her. Believing her, Polly was furious. If that was all, it would have been fine, but Polly kept calling in anger for hours and finally said,
If this happens again, I won't forgive you,
and hung up. Mom, what's wrong? Deanna, welcome back. Nothing, really. That's a lie. That voice was Polly's, right? Deanna looked at me sharply. It was hard to stick to the lie. Polly and Deanna, although siblings, if I keep this from them, it might someday cause trouble. I even worried it might harm Sarah. With that thought, I decided to tell Deanna and the others everything. Deanna related to Garrett, and eventually the 3 of us sat down to talk in the evening. I can't believe that idiot Polly. He barely involved himself in Matt's funeral, but calls only in times like this? Unbelievable.
That happened? I'm sorry I didn't notice.
No, it's not your fault, but I'm worried it might trouble you, like today with the phone call. Don't worry about that. More importantly, Polly may not realize it, but you should be more careful around Catherine.
That is...
Deanna and Garrett exchanged a look, then nodded and began to speak.
Actually, near my company there's this bar district. One day when I happened to go for a drink, I spotted Catherine there, and she was with a man I've never seen before.
Honestly, I felt a pang of sympathy for my own son and couldn't say anything. Well, that's his own fault. But if something like this happens again to Mom, we need to think about it. Deanna said this with a cheerful smile. For now, leave this to us. Right, Garrett?
Yes, leave it to me, Carrie.
Yes, thank you. But really don't push yourselves. I agreed, feeling somewhat overwhelmed by their insistence. Anyway, I thought it best to have nothing more to do with it all. But reality doesn't always go as planned. Catherine came again, seemingly displeased with our last phone conversation. Oh, Carrie, still working part-time, I see. Catherine, we talked about this on the phone, didn't we? It seems nothing got through to you. I'm disappointed. Catherine seemed displeased by my words. Are you sure you should be saying that, Carrie? Do you know that Polly's client is Garrett's company? Catherine suddenly laughed mockingly and blurted out. Hearing this for the first time, I was shocked and my eyes widened. Seeming pleased with my reaction, Catherine cheerfully laughed and whispered to me, Come to the cafe by the river called Lark later today, if you don't want Garrett's company to go under. Okay? Catherine's smile looked devilish. I could only nod and said, Understood. And she left the shop contentedly, still smiling. After my part-time shift, I headed to the designated cafe. Catherine was already there and beckoned me over. You came as I expected, Carrie. Her sinister smile sent a chill down my spine. The cafe was quiet, seemingly unnoticed by others. Inside, the two of us sat in the tense silence. What do you want? I was hurt by what happened before, so I want you to take responsibility. Catherine continued with a smile. Besides, Polly is an executive in his company, involved in big deals. His company and Garrett are about to have a major business deal. But what if that deal falls through because of you, Carrie? Wouldn't Garrett lose his job? You! If you care about your beloved Garrett and Deanna, promise to pay me $300,000 right now. $300,000? It's a big amount, but you said a lot to me, right? It's only fair. If you don't agree. Catherine raised her hand. A menacing man emerged from the back of the cafe and stood in front of the table. This man, a friend of mine, works in a, let's say, shady world. So if you don't pay, I won't be responsible for what happens to Deanna or Sarah, okay? I was speechless at her shocking words. Realizing I had married my son to such a terrible woman was overwhelming. I glared at her and managed to say, Understood. I appreciate your understanding. And you know what will happen if you tell Deanna or Garrett about this, right? Yes. Then I look forward to your cooperation, Carrie. I left the cafe feeling like I was being chased out. Returning home, the house was still and quiet. More than anything, I was shocked at the ugliness of the person Polly had married. Sighing, I sat in front of my husband's picture. Dad, I'll do my best. I will protect what you left me in my own way. Declaring this, I steeled myself. I was determined not to let Catherine have her way. Remember this. I'll make you regret everything you've done. First, I set a date to transfer the money to Catherine. Having agreed to pay and knowing she expected it, I calmly set a time frame to prevent any harm to Deanna or Sarah. Explaining the difficulty of the amount for a part-timer like me, I promised to pay within a month, and surprisingly, Catherine agreed cheerfully. Understood. So within a month, then? Yes, I'll make sure to pay. That's because there was a reason. I set it for a month. Within a month, a relative's funeral was scheduled. I wanted to resolve things there, so I arranged it without causing any issues. Today is the day of the funeral, where many relatives will gather, including Polly and his wife. I decided to settle things there. Oh, Sarah has grown so much. It's been a while, everyone. Our family relatives are relatively close-knit. Just before the funeral started, Polly and his wife arrived.
Wow, this atmosphere brings back memories.
Ugh, this country vibe is too much. Can't wait to leave. Despite the occasion, their usual attitudes were unchanged. As one of the uncles was about to say something, Catherine approached me first. Hello, Carrie. Her face clearly showed anger, probably about the money not being transferred yet. Hello, Catherine. After exchanging greetings, the funeral started, so Catherine couldn't say more and took her seat. But her expression seemed to say, "You'll remember this." After the funeral ended, the meal started. The topics were nostalgic memories of the deceased relative, current updates, and talks about my husband, Matt. Used to go drinking with Matt a lot. Really, time flies. But it's important to have something like that necklace to remember them by, isn't it? Indeed. I touched the necklace as I spoke. The small pearl necklace was a gift from Matt. Lost in these fond memories, Catherine suddenly raised her voice. But is it a tactless to wear such a thing here? The relatives in the room started murmuring. Besides, that's a fake, right? No such tarnished pearls exist. Well, fake pearls suit a poor person like Carrie, right? How dare you? Wait, Deanna, calm down. But Catherine's cheeks were flushed, probably from drinking. Seemingly emboldened by alcohol, she blurted out these words. Honestly, it was different from what I expected, but she was self-destructing, so I silently vowed to make her pay dearly. Before I could respond, the relative spoke up. What is she talking about? Carrie poor? Don't make such jokes. How could you say such a thing? It's just your lack of judgment. The relatives, angered by Catherine's comments, spoke back, and she seemed surprised. I stood up and faced her. I don't know why you think this pearl is fake, but it's from Matt's jewelry store. It's definitely not fake. Tiffany, ever heard of it? What? Tiffany? As in the famous jewelers? You married him without knowing his father-in-law's company. Carrie used to be the assistant manager of that store. But she's working part-time. That's what I said before. Mom is working part-time just for fulfillment. We don't need her money, but she insists on paying us living expenses every month. Besides, she's retired now, but there's an inheritance and savings left by Matt. We're far from poor. Catherine looked dumbfounded. Polly hurried to her side, trying to defend her. Wait, don't blame her. Polly, look at reality. She's awful. Shut up, little sister. What do you know? Catherine glared at us. I came here to settle this thoroughly, so I began. You won't get away with this. Who won't? Your wife running a scam? And if it gets out she has a boyfriend, you'd be the one who couldn't bear it. What? How do you know that? About that, let me explain. Here's the proof. Garrett showed documents revealing various truths. Photos included the cafe I visited, the man Catherine was with, and Catherine walking closely with the man who wasn't Polly. What's this about? Yes, Catherine had been involved in scamming people with bad friends from her student days. That was the full story behind her treatment of me, and Polly was partly to blame too. Polly, while our companies do business, I've never heard your name mentioned. But you've been telling Catherine you're an executive, but you hold no such position, right? What? You've been lying to me? Hearing Garrett's explanation, Catherine started screaming. Sighing, I retrieved an attached case from the reception, opening it in front of them. It contained $300,000 in cash. Here's the $300,000 you unfairly demanded from me, Catherine. Emphasizing unfairly, she glared at me, her face turning red. I had recorded everything from the day she took me to the cafe. I never intended to treat my son and wife this way, but I thought it was best for them to learn a hard lesson. However, The condition is that you never appear before us again. You've caused enough trouble, and when I die, you won't get a penny of my inheritance."
Wait, Mom, I'll leave Catherine.
What? Polly, when you decided to marry Catherine, Matt and I tried to stop you. Weren't you going to be happy with her? You're her husband. Don't change your attitude now. Support her until the end.
What?
Stunned, the relatives started shouting, "That's right, get out of here!" Initially, the two of them talked back, but they couldn't stand against the majority and left the shop meekly. "Carrie, that must have been tough. Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm sorry everyone for causing such a commotion." "Don't worry about it. Your uncle would be pleased too." "Mom." "Deanna, Garrett, thank you so much. I've caused trouble for you too."
Not at all. We just did what we wanted to do.
Finally, I feel like everything has cleared up and life is returning to normal. Afterward, it turned out Catherine was involved in various other fraudulent activities and ended up getting arrested by the police. Polly came crying to me soon after, but since Matt had warned him repeatedly, I decided to keep my distance. The commotion seemed to have spread rumors to Polly's company, and now he's been demoted, working at a subsidiary. As for me, I continue with my part-time work, living a peaceful life. This pearl you gave me, it helped me through this ordeal. Perhaps there's really power in the things our loved ones leave behind. Despite getting wrapped up in various issues, this experience made me realize the supportive people and warmth around me. From now on, I plan to live my remaining life, never forgetting to be grateful for each day.
Friends to invite to the wedding. After the ceremony, I congratulated them again. "Congratulations! You looked beautiful in your dress, by the way. When are you registering the marriage?" I meant it as casual conversation. Just as Joss was about to answer, Selena elbowed him in the side. "I think the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law relationship is weird. I married Joss and we'll build a new family together. So you're a stranger now. Don't meddle in our affairs." I was shocked by Selena's blatant hostility. My husband, standing next to me, was also stunned, and Selena's parents looked at their daughter in disbelief. "We're going to be happy on our own, so don't interfere. Let's go, Joss."
That's how it is. Just leave us alone."
Joss followed Selena out, leaving only his words behind. We could only watch them leave in shock. My husband, coming to his senses, was furious.
"That guy's no son of mine. Don't let him in the house again."
He was angry, but we didn't hear from the couple after that. As a mother, I couldn't help but worry about how my son was living, even if it was better not to get involved. I sent discreet messages to check on him, but though they were read, he never replied. During this time, my daughter Julia also got married. Unlike Joss, she and her husband paid for their wedding, which was quite large with many friends and colleagues. Her husband, saying his parents' house was far from work, set up their new home near us. Julia, now a homemaker, often invited me for lunch or shopping, making sure I didn't feel lonely. Still, there was no contact with Joss. He probably didn't even know his sister got married. Julia got pregnant soon after her wedding. She didn't want to give birth at her parents' home, so I went over every day to help with my grandchild, spending very happy days. Then, 2 years later, I received a message from Joss.
"I'll come by the house tomorrow."
It was a curt message, but I had plans to take my grandchild to the dermatologist. I have plans in the morning, so I can't. He read the reply, but again, no response. The next day, Joss and Selena came to our house in the afternoon. They looked different, much heavier than before. What happened? Are you not feeling well?
Actually, Selena gave birth last month.
I had asked about their body shapes, but Joss, smiling happily, reported Selena's pregnancy. Selena, too, was smiling with joy.
Actually, it's quite rare, but we're having triplets.
Triplets? I was genuinely surprised to hear it was triplets. Up to this point, Selena hadn't spoken a word, not even a greeting.
The babies are still in the hospital, but we can finally bring all three home the day after tomorrow. The doctors say childcare will be really tough and it's better to get help from others, so we decided to live here and have you help with childcare.
No way! I was appalled at their audacity to decide on their own that I would help. As soon as I refused, Selena cheerfully spoke up. Paige, you get to take care of your cute grandchildren. In tough times, families should help each other out. Which family are you referring to? I'm moving out next month to live with my husband. My daughter's child is adorable, and I'm already happy taking care of her every day. So there's no need for me to bother with someone else's child, right? Is that all you wanted to talk about? Joss and his wife looked pale at my words.
My sister got married when? I didn't know she had a child.
I've reported everything via messages. It's your own fault for ignoring them.
I haven't seen any messages. Selena?
Joss looked at Selena, who awkwardly averted her eyes. She must be the type to secretly check someone else's phone. I guessed she saw my messages and deleted them, or did something before Joss could see them. It doesn't matter, but that's the situation, so there's nothing I can do for you. We take back what we said about not being family, so please, at least take care of the grandkids. If not, could you send us money every month for them? The always confident Selena now looked desperate. She must have believed that I would want to take care of the grandkids no matter what. I have no intention of spending money on anyone but my family. Why don't you ask Selena's parents? Both fell silent at my suggestion. Did you tell Selena's parents that they're not family either?
Well, actually, right after we got married, Selena quit her job, and with just my income, we couldn't make ends meet, so we got a lot of financial help from them. But neither of us can cook, and eating out every day, the money just disappeared. When we asked for more money, they told us never to come back.
I was appalled. That explained their body shapes. They probably ate whatever they liked every day. And never come back must mean they took the money without gratitude, acting entitled. I had thought of giving them a lump sum as a congratulatory gift for the bird, but now it seemed better not to. Pampering them even a bit would make them depend on others for everything. Please leave for today. You have preparations to make for the triplets?
Mom, we can't afford cribs or strollers.
If you're working properly, you should review how you spend your money first. Selena, sell that brand bag and clothes you're carrying and try to manage on your own first. You'd better go back and do what you can now. I practically ushered them out. As I told Joss and his wife earlier, I'm starting to prepare for my move to live with my husband. Actually, my husband is transferring back to this region, so we decided to sell this house and buy an apartment nearby. Our kids have left the nest, and this house inherited from my in-laws is over 50 years old. It was a good opportunity, a decision made after consulting with my husband. Clearing out the kids' belongings and organizing a single-family house by myself is a daunting task. I worry it won't be done in a month. Occasionally, I take a break to see my granddaughter, but Joss calls nearly every day.
Hey, don't you care about your grandkids? Someone is always crying. It's really tough.
Seek community parenting support. The local office will help you. Bye. If they were nicer, I might have listened. But it irks me that they think pushing the grandkids to the front will solve everything. Selena sends me loads of pictures of the triplets. I couldn't help but find the triplets adorable when looking at the photos. So I sent a bunch of heart emojis in response. On the day before the move, my husband had returned and we were finishing up the last of the packing and cleaning when Joss and his wife suddenly showed up again.
Really? Is this how you want to be? As my parents, you'll never see your grandchildren again, you know?
That's right. They're only this cute now, you know. There's so much unique cuteness about triplets. Why won't you help? I was exasperated by their opening barrage of complaints. Two of the triplets were sound asleep, and one was amusing itself by chewing on a towel. Incredibly cute. Have Selena's parents forgiven you? When I asked this, the two of them clammed up and looked down. I guess they're still behaving like this. I thought becoming parents would make you understand our feelings a bit, but you two haven't changed.
You say adorable grandchildren, but you were the ones who abandoned your parents first. You said it yourself. Stick to your words to the end. Don't come here anymore. Leave.
My husband, meeting Joss's couple for the first time since the wedding, was still irritated from back then and spoke harshly.
If you're selling this house, give it to us. I'm the eldest son. We are selling this house and using the money for the next place we're living with your mom. It doesn't matter if you're the eldest son or eldest daughter. The house is ours to do with as we please. But if we had this house, we could save on rent and make life easier.
Joss sounded almost tearful, clearly in dire straits for money. Why are you so strapped for cash? You said your salary wasn't that bad. It might not be lavish, but you shouldn't be struggling to live. At that, Joss and Selena exchanged awkward glances.
Well, actually, I quit my job. I was headhunted by a company offering double my salary, but it turned out to be a place with terrible working conditions. I ended up earning half and quit last month. I'm job hunting now, but there's nowhere paying as much as my old job.
Joss appealed with tearful eyes. I sympathized with his plight, but that's a different issue.
I understand it's tough, but I can't stand your attitudes. Why not? Selena married into our family and even gave us grandchildren. Shouldn't we be grateful?
That's right. Some people struggle because they can't have grandchildren. We're offering to help, so what's the problem?
That's what I'm saying. Your attitude is the problem.
My husband was at his wits' end with the two of them. Please, just go home already. I was exhausted from talking to them, but they refused to leave and the triplets started crying, turning the house into chaos. Mom, I came to help. Joss and family. It's been a while. My daughter peeked in, surprised to see Joss. I haven't told my daughter about the frequent recent contacts from Joss and his wife. I thought it would worry her. She must have been truly shocked thinking they had been out of touch since the wedding.
Big sis, why are you here?
I come by often. Wow, triplets, so cute. Are they Joss's kids?
Yeah, but...
Joss and Selena were taken aback by her reaction. They don't look like Joss at all. Maybe to take after Selena? No, that's not true. Look, their eyes are just like Joss's. Selena was acting somewhat suspiciously. Really? It's great. All three look like their mom. Enough. Let's go home, Joss.
But the money?
I'll ask my parents again. As soon as my daughter arrived, Selena hurriedly put two of the triplets in a stroller, handed one to Joss, and left quickly with a large bag. What's wrong? Did I do something?
Maybe. They're not Joss's kids.
At my husband's grim joke, I replied, that can't be. But I couldn't help getting goosebumps. I was truly exhausted from talking to those two, but there was no time to dwell on it. We hurriedly resumed our work. Since then, contact from Joss and his wife had abruptly stopped. However, months later, my phone suddenly rang.
I got divorced. I want to talk.
He had gotten divorced, unsurprising given their picky relationship. I might seem like a cold parent, but I didn't feel particularly moved. Reluctantly, my husband and I decided to meet and hear him out. By the way, I hadn't given Joss our new address. I was worried he might bring the children and refuse to leave. We called Joss to a nearby family restaurant to hear him out. Joss had lost the plumpness he had before, looking so thin that I worried he was ill. Are you okay? You've lost so much weight.
I have no money.
Joss looked down in despair and my husband and I exchanged glances.
What happened with the divorce? I kept thinking about what sister said, so I secretly did a DNA test. Turned out they weren't mine. Selena just kept saying she didn't know. When I said I couldn't raise them if they weren't mine, she demanded compensation.
Joss's voice broke and a tear fell.
Selena's parents, took her back, but the real father demanded compensation from me as the alleged affair partner. Apparently, she was dating us both at the same time before we got married. I consulted a lawyer for free advice, but it's been so busy and stressful that my health deteriorated and I couldn't work.
Joss wiped away his tear and looked down.
I thought I couldn't burden mom and dad anymore, so I've been scraping by with part-time jobs, but I'm at my limit. What about the compensation?
My husband stood with his arms crossed, expressionless. It's impossible not to love a child you have birthed and raised yourself. I felt an urge to help somehow, thinking maybe we should let him come home, get his life sorted out, and then encourage him to be independent.
The lawyer says there's no need to pay and I should rather claim from Selena, but I don't have money for a lawyer or a court case. So it is.
Saying that, my husband fell silent, deep in thought. I, his wife, couldn't tell what he was thinking. So no job prospects?
Not yet. Okay.
My husband looked resolute.
I'll introduce you to a job. Work for about a year and you should have enough to file a claim. You'll manage. Actually, I can't even pay this month's rent. Do some part-time job juggling. Look for day labor. You can survive a month that way.
My husband seemed intent on keeping Joss at arm's length.
Joss, you cut ties with this family. You only play the son card when it's convenient. How many hurtful things have you said to your mother? I don't know a man who only comes crawling back when he needs help or money. You got tricked by that woman because you try to use people. That's terrible.
Joss's tears were not only unstopping, they were overflowing. I listened silently to my husband's words, which were exactly right.
Work hard, get your life back on track. When you do, we might become unnecessary to you again. I'll contact you about the job later. Paige, let's go home.
Saying this, my husband stood up, leaving the crying Joss behind, and quickly left the family restaurant after putting money for the bill on the table. Despite our having only 2 cups of coffee, he left $100 bill, perhaps showing in his own way that he still cared about his son. I wonder how Joss felt about that $100 bill. Later, my husband introduced Joss to a job. The salary wasn't great, but it was enough for a single person to live on and save. A year later, after Joss started working, he claimed compensation from Selena, receiving a considerable sum. We heard about it through a speakerphone call with my husband. The call started with updates about Selena. Eventually, she remarried the real father of the triplets, who was originally just a fling. The marriage was filled with constant arguments and ended in divorce within 3 months. She received only a small amount of child support and ended up moving back to her parents' house. There, she relied on her parents to look after the children while she went out, which enraged them, and they eventually kicked her out. Now Selena is living in a mother and child home, found a daycare, and somehow managed to secure a part-time job. When Joss made the compensation claim, Selena, who was met with a lawyer, cried out loudly and couldn't have a proper conversation. She's now living on a meager part-time income and government allowances, struggling to make ends meet for herself and her 3 children. Her once lustrous hair is now unkempt, and without makeup, she looks like a completely different person. Joss hasn't seen Selena since then, but he received the compensation in one lump sum. Joss used a portion of the money to apologize to Selena's parents. He calculated the amount he had received for living expenses, apologized, and repaid them. He told us that it was hard for him when her parents cried, saying, "If you had been more responsible, none of this would have happened." At that time, all I could think about was how Joss found Selena. He was so obsessed with seeing her smile that he didn't consider the inconvenience to others. Capturing the attention of the popular and attractive Selena had made him overjoyed. He regretted not being more mature, thinking maybe his life would have been different. But regretting now won't make everyone happy. My husband and I had completely lost our warm feelings towards Joss. "I want to repay the wedding expenses to you, Mom, and Dad," Joss said in a feeble tone. "Don't accept it until your life is back on track." My husband replied and ended the call. While we acknowledge Joss's sincere remorse and his effort to improve, his actions can never be fully excused. If this feeling of regret continues when he starts to cherish his family, we might meet and have a meal with Joss again. But until he finds someone important and becomes a reliable family leader, I doubt I can accept him. I realized how important it is not to spoil a child. Now, a new chapter begins with just my husband and me. He is my lifelong partner, and I am determined to spend our days with smiles.
The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp edges cutting into my fingertips. Full scholarship to Wharton Business School. The words blurred as tears welled up, but I blinked them back. I couldn't let anyone see me cry, not here in the store, not anywhere. Another day, another story. But first, I'd love to know where my listeners are from. Comment your location below. And hey, if you're enjoying these tales, consider becoming a permanent part of our family. Now, where were we? I'm Hannah, and this moment should have been the happiest of my life. Instead, I was hiding in the stockroom of Carter's General Store, surrounded by towers of inventory that had become my prison for the past year. Hannah, where are you? These boxes won't unpack themselves. My father's voice boomed through the store, making me jump. I shoved the letter into my back pocket, my heart pounding against my ribs. Coming. I grabbed a random box, pretending I'd been working all along. The scholarship letter burned against my skin, a secret that could either save me or destroy everything. My father stood at the register, arms crossed, watching as Connor, my younger brother, charmed another customer with his rehearsed smile. See how natural he is with people? Pride dripped from every word. Born for this business. I bit my tongue until I tasted copper. Connor was 15, barely passing his classes, but he was the golden child, the chosen heir. I set the box down harder than necessary, making my father's head snap toward me. Careful with the merchandise, he snapped. Those are crystal wine glasses, not your teenage attitude. The bell above the door chimed, and my grandmother Eleanor walked in, her silver hair gleaming in the fluorescent lights. My chest loosened slightly. She was the only one who saw me, really saw me. Hannah, darling, she called out, ignoring my father's presence. Ready for our Saturday business lesson? Before I could answer, my father stepped between us. Actually, Mother, Hannah needs to finish inventory today. We're short-staffed. Richard, Eleanor's voice carried that steel edge I'd always admired. Our lessons are non-negotiable. You agreed. I watched their silent battle of wills, counting the seconds until one of them broke. My father looked away first. He always did. Fine, but be back in 2 hours. We have a shipment coming in. Eleanor linked her arm through mine, leading me toward the door. As we passed Connor, he didn't even look up from his phone. Why should he? He'd never had to fight for anything in his life. Now, Eleanor said once we were seated in her office above the store, "Tell me what's bothering you. Your aura's all wrong today." I pulled out the crumpled letter, smoothing it on her mahogany desk. Her eyes widened as she read, then filled with tears. Oh, Hannah, this is wonderful. A full scholarship to Wharton? Your parents must be thrilled. My laugh came out bitter and hollow. I haven't told them. What's the point? They'll just say no, like they always do. Nonsense. This is your future we're talking about. Your parents will understand. Like they understood when I wanted to take that business course last summer, or when I suggested updating our inventory system. I stood up, pacing the room. They don't want me to succeed, Grandma. They want me to stay here, working for free, watching Connor inherit everything I've worked for. Eleanor's face hardened. Then we'll make them understand. Tonight, I'll host a family dinner to celebrate. No, please. 7 o'clock. No arguments. She reached for her phone. It's time your parents remembered who built this business from nothing. And who really has the final say. I left her office with dread coiling in my stomach. Tonight would change everything, but not in the way my grandmother imagined. Because what none of them knew was that I discovered something else last week, something that would tear our family apart. The scholarship wasn't just my ticket to freedom anymore. It was my weapon. And tonight, I'd finally use it. Grandmother's dining room felt like a courtroom. The mahogany table stretched between us like a barrier, my parents on one side, Eleanor at the head, and me, trapped between worlds. The scholarship letter lay in the center, pristine white against dark wood. Absolutely not. My father's wine glass hit the table hard enough to slosh red onto the white tablecloth. This isn't up for discussion. Richard, Eleanor's voice cut through the tension. Your daughter has earned a full scholarship to one of the most prestigious business schools in the country. This is an achievement worth celebrating. My mother's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her glass. The store needs her here. Family comes first, Eleanor. You taught us that. I taught you about ambition, Eleanor shot back. About building something from nothing. That's exactly what Hannah wants to do. I stared at the growing wine stain on the tablecloth, watching it spread like the poison in our family. Connor's empty chair mocked us. He was at soccer practice, naturally excused from this family crisis. Hannah knows her place, my father said, as if I weren't even there. The store is her inheritance. My inheritance? The words burst out before I could stop them. That's funny, considering how you parade Connor around as your successor. How you let him skip work whenever he wants while I'm trapped there 60 hours a week without pay. Without pay? Eleanor's head snapped toward my father. Richard, you're not paying her? My father's face reddened. She's learning the business. By stocking shelves and running the register? I pushed back my chair, standing. By watching Connor get praised for showing up once a week while I miss every school event, every social gathering. Everything that makes me feel human. Sit down, my mother hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Mother. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone, bringing up the photo I'd been saving. Just like there's a difference between managing the store and stealing from it. The room went deadly quiet. My father's face drained of color as I showed Eleanor the photo, a screenshot of doctored inventory records I'd discovered last week. What is this? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Ask them where the money from the Wilson account went, I said. Or the Peterson supply order. Or the... My father lunged across the table, grabbing for my phone. Wine glasses toppled. My mother screamed. But Eleanor was faster, snatching the phone from my hand before he could reach it. Richard, she said, her voice trembling as she scrolled through the evidence. What have you done? Nothing that concerns you, Mother. The store is mine now. The store, Eleanor stood slowly, belongs to me. Or have you forgotten who still holds the deed? My mother burst into tears, right on cue. We had expenses. Connor's private coaching, the country club membership. Stop. Eleanor's command froze us all. She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. How long have you known? A week. I found the discrepancies while updating the inventory sheets. The ones Dad said were a waste of time. My father's chair scraped back. This is ridiculous. Hannah's making up stories because she's jealous of her brother. Because she can't accept her role. Your daughter, Eleanor Cudden, has just shown more business acumen in 5 minutes than you have in 20 years. She'll make an excellent CEO after she graduates from Wharton. What? 3 voices spoke at once. You're going to college, Hannah. And when you graduate, you'll take over as CEO of Carter's General Store. Eleanor's smile was razor sharp. Your father and mother will work under you, at reduced salaries, until they've repaid every penny they've stolen. Unless, of course, they'd prefer I involve the authorities. My parents' faces showed everything rage, fear, defeat. But I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a hollow space where family should have been. I'll see you at work tomorrow, I said, gathering my things. Early shift, right? Don't worry, I'll do the inventory. I'm good at finding things people try to hide. I left them there, with their spilled wine and shattered illusions. Tomorrow would bring consequences, but tonight I had won. And it felt nothing like victory. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries wrapped around me like a shield as I tied my apron behind the counter at Megan's Cafe. 3 weeks of secret morning shifts had taught me more about business than years at my family store. Here, my opinions mattered. My ideas were heard. And most importantly, I got paid. You're getting good at those lattes, Megan said, watching me create a perfect leaf pattern in the foam. Much better than serving hardware and paint samples, right? I froze, nearly spilling the drink. How did you? Small town, Hannah. Your family store is practically an institution. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Though I'm curious why you're hiding this from them. The bell above the door chimed before I could answer. My blood turned to ice as Connor walked in, his soccer team in tow. Our eyes met. His widened in recognition, then narrowed with calculation. In that moment, my 15-year-old brother looked exactly like our father. Well, he drawled, approaching the counter. This is interesting. What can I get you? I kept my voice professional, praying he'd play along. Does Dad know his perfect daughter is moonlighting at a coffee shop? His teammates snickered. I felt Megan tense beside me. Connor. Relax, he cut me off, pulling out his phone. I'm not going to tell him. Yet. But I might need some favors. My hands clenched around the counter. That's called blackmail. That's called family. He mimicked our father's tone perfectly. Speaking of which, Dad's looking for last month's inventory records. The ones you're supposedly updating. The ones that proved their theft. I'd hidden them in Eleanor's office, but if my father was looking for them. I have to go, I told Megan, already untying my apron. Family emergency. Family emergency or family prison? Connor called after me. Better hurry, sis. Dad's in quite a mood today. I ran the 6 blocks to the store, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the front windows, I could see my father in Eleanor's office, rifling through her desk. The bell betrayed my entrance. He looked up, his face darkening when he saw me. Where are they? He descended the stairs 2 at a time. The inventory records. Where did you hide them? I don't know what you're talking about. But my voice shook, giving me away. He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the stockroom. You think you're clever, don't you? Playing detective, running to your grandmother with lies. They're not lies. I yanked free. I saw the numbers. I saw what you and Mom did with Connor's college fund, with the store's profits. You saw nothing. His fist slammed into a shelf, sending paint cans crashing. You're a child playing at business. Your brother understands loyalty. Family. You? You're just like your grandmother, too ambitious for your own good. Is that why you're stealing from her? The words hung between us like poison. His face transformed, becoming someone I didn't recognize. Listen carefully, he said, his voice deadly quiet. You will find those records and destroy them. You will apologize to your mother for upsetting her. And you will never speak of this again. Or I'll make sure Eleanor learns about your little coffee shop job. How you've been lying to everyone, abandoning your duties here. Connor told you. Connor understands hierarchy. Position. Something you never learned. He straightened his tie, becoming the polished store manager again. You have until closing to make this right. Don't disappoint me again. He left me there, surrounded by spilled paint and shattered illusions. My phone buzzed, a text from Connor. Sorry, sis. But family comes first. I sank to the floor, paint seeping into my jeans. The records were safe in Eleanor's home office, not here. But for how long? And what would happen when my father realized that? My phone buzzed again. Megan, whatever's happening, you have options. Come back when you can. We'll figure it out. Options. I stared at the message, an idea forming. My parents thought they had me trapped, but they'd forgotten one thing. I was Eleanor Carter's granddaughter. And she hadn't built an empire by playing nice. I stood up, paint dripping from my clothes like war paint. Time to show them what real family loyalty looked like. The cafe's morning rush kept me too busy to think, which was exactly what I needed. 2 weeks had passed since Connor's betrayal, and I'd managed to stay one step ahead of my father's search for the evidence. But my time was running out. Your grandmother's here again, Megan whispered as she passed behind me. 3rd time this week. Eleanor sat in her usual corner booth, pretending to read the newspaper while watching me work. She hadn't mentioned my secret job, but her presence spoke volumes. I brought her usual Earl Grey, setting it down carefully. Is this a coincidence or an intervention? Can't a grandmother enjoy quality tea? She folded her paper, fixing me with that penetrating stare. Though I must say, your latte art is impressive. Almost as impressive as your ability to be in two places at once. My hands trembled slightly. I can explain. No need. She pulled out a manila envelope. I think these explain enough. Inside were copies of every doctored record I'd found, plus dozens more going back years. My father's theft ran deeper than I'd imagined. How did you? I built this business, Hannah. Did you really think I wouldn't have my own copies? She sipped her tea. The question is, why didn't you come to me directly? Before I could answer, Jason burst through the door, his face pale. Hannah, you need to see this. He thrust his phone at me. On screen was our local news website. Carter's General Store announces major expansion. Teenage son to head new location. There's more, Jason said quietly. Check the business filing. I scrolled down, my vision blurring as I read. My father had created a new corporation, transferring store assets into Connor's name. He was systematically draining the original business, Eleanor's business, into a new entity she couldn't touch. Well, Eleanor's voice cut through my shock. It seems your father's gotten creative with his theft. I have to stop this. I started untying my apron, but Eleanor's hand caught mine. No, you need to think strategically. Richard's making his move because he's desperate. He knows we have evidence of his earlier fraud. This is his attempt to secure Connor's future before it all falls apart. At your expense, I said. And mine. Actually, Megan joined our huddle, holding up her phone at everyone's expense. Your father just posted the store's new work schedule. You're down for 60 hours next week, all closing shifts. Unpaid, I assume. He's trying to force me out, I realized. Make it impossible for me to keep working here. Or study for finals, Jason added. Or graduate. Eleanor's face hardened. He's not just stealing money anymore. He's stealing your future. What do I do? The words came out smaller than I intended. You fight, Megan said firmly. Starting with this. She handed me an envelope. I was saving it for the right moment. Inside was a job offer, assistant manager position at the cafe, full-time, with benefits and tuition assistance for business classes at the local college. I can't accept this, I whispered. The store. Will survive without you, Eleanor cut in. The question is, will you survive with it? My phone buzzed, a text from Connor. Dad's looking for you. He knows about the cafe. Better come home now or things get worse. Things are already worse, I said, showing them the message. They have been for a long time. Eleanor stood, gathering her things. Then perhaps it's time to make them better. The question is, are you ready for what that means? I looked around, at Megan's encouraging smile, Jason's worried face, the cafe that had become more home than my house ever was. Then at Eleanor, who'd built an empire from nothing and was watching it be stolen piece by piece. Yes, I said, my voice stronger. I'm ready. Good. Eleanor's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because your father isn't the only one who can play the legal system. Shall we show him how it's really done? I took off my apron for the last time, folding it carefully. The war for Carter's General Store was about to begin, and this time I was choosing my side. The graduation gown felt like armor as I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. Downstairs, I could hear my parents hosting their annual graduation party, not for me, but for the family's social circle. My own celebration would come later, they'd said, after I'd earned it through summer work at the store. My phone buzzed with Eleanor's text, "Everything's ready. Are you sure about this?" Before I could respond, Connor appeared in my doorway. Dad wants you downstairs. Now. Since when are you his messenger? Since he found out about your secret bank account. Connor's face was uncharacteristically serious. Hannah, he's really angry. Maybe you should just what? Give up? Let him take everything. I pulled out my desk drawer, grabbing the USB drive containing copies of all the evidence. Like you did? I didn't have a choice. We always have a choice, Connor. You just made the easy one. Downstairs, the party chatter died as I descended. My father stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding my laptop, the one I'd bought with my cafe earnings. Care to explain this? He turned the screen toward me, showing my bank statements. Or how about these? He held up printed emails between Eleanor and her lawyers. My mother hurried the last guests out, her perfect hostess smile cracking. Richard, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. His voice cut through the room. I want witnesses for this. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of daughter we raised. I reached the bottom step, acutely aware of Connor watching from above, of Jason hovering near the front door, ready with his car if I needed escape. You want witnesses? I kept my voice steady. Fine. Let's talk about the Wilson account. The Peterson orders. The new corporation you created in Connor's name. The color drained from his face. You ungrateful. Or maybe we should discuss this. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording I'd made last week, his voice clearly discussing how to hide assets from Eleanor's auditors. My mother lunged for the phone, but I stepped back. Don't bother. It's already backed up. Everything is. You're bluffing, my father said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Am I? Check your email. Eleanor's lawyers should have sent the preliminary audit findings by now. He grabbed his phone, scrolling frantically. With each swipe, his face grew darker. You're done here, he finally said, his voice deadly quiet. Pack your things. You have 30 minutes. Richard. My mother's perfect mask cracked completely. You can't. She's been working with Mother behind our backs, Linda. Planning to destroy everything we've built. Everything you stole, you mean. The words felt like fire leaving my mouth. Everything you took from Eleanor, from the store, from me. From you. He laughed, harsh and hollow. What could I possibly have taken from you? My childhood. My choices. My future. I pulled out my graduation cords, valedictorian, honor society, business club president. Everything I earned while you were grooming Connor to steal Eleanor's legacy. Connor's sharp intake of breath from the stairs was the only sound in the room. You have 29 minutes left, my father said. Use them wisely. I turned to the stairs, but Connor blocked my path. Wait, he said, his voice small. Is it true? About the new corporation? Ask him yourself. I pushed past him, heading to my room. Ask him what he's been teaching you about family loyalty. 28 minutes later, I stood on the front lawn with 2 suitcases and my laptop. Jason's car idled at the curb, and Eleanor waited in her Mercedes behind him. Hannah. Connor's voice made me turn. He stood in the doorway, holding something. You forgot this. He tossed me the USB drive I'd left on my desk, the one containing all the evidence. I didn't forget it, I said. I left it for you. Time to make your choice, little brother. I got into Eleanor's car without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I watched Connor stare at the drive in his hand, our father's shadow falling across him from inside. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. I just hoped Connor would see the light before it was too late. Eleanor's study felt like a war room, with papers spread across her antique desk and lawyers' business cards scattered like ammunition. 3 days after being thrown out, I sat across from her, watching as she reviewed the final audit results. $500,000. She set down the report, her hands trembling slightly. My own son stole $500,000. A knock at the door made us both jump. Connor stood there, pale and determined. I found something else. He placed a laptop on the desk, our father's personal computer. The password was my birthday. His laugh was hollow. Guess he never thought I'd use it against him. Eleanor opened a folder labeled New Ventures. Her sharp intake of breath drew me closer. He's selling the store, I whispered, scanning the documents. He's already found a buyer. Not just selling it, Connor's voice cracked. Liquidating it. Everything Grandma built, he's breaking it apart for quick cash. The papers are ready to sign tomorrow. My phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Your parents just went into the store. They're clearing out the safe. Now. Eleanor stood, suddenly every inch the business titan who'd built an empire. We move now. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the store's parking lot. My parents' car sat alone under the security light, casting long shadows. "Remember," Eleanor said, "let me do the talking." "Hannah, you." The store's front window exploded outward, showering glass across the pavement. Through the broken window, I saw flames licking up the wooden shelves. "No!" Eleanor's scream pierced the night as we ran toward the building. Inside, smoke filled the air, and through it, I saw my father feeding files into the fire, my mother frantically emptying the safe. "Stop." My voice was lost in the crackling flames. "You're destroying everything." It was already destroyed. My father turned, his face illuminated by the fire. "The moment you chose her over family. This is my family's legacy." Eleanor stepped forward, but the flames blocked her path. "Everything I built." "You built nothing." He threw another stack of papers into the fire. "I kept this business running while you played mentor to her. I made the hard choices. I deserved." "You deserved prison." Connor's voice cut through the smoke. He held up his phone, recording everything. "And now you'll get it." Sirens wailed in the distance. My mother grabbed her purse, stumbling toward the back door. "Richard, we have to go." "It's over, Dad," I said, watching our family's history burn. "Just stop." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or recognition. Then he smiled, cold and final. "You want to run this business so badly? Try rebuilding it from ashes." He threw the last files into the flames and ran, leaving us to watch everything burn. The firefighters arrived minutes later, but it was too late. The store, Eleanor's legacy, my inheritance, our family's foundation, was gone. Hours later, we sat in Eleanor's kitchen, covered in soot and defeat. My parents had vanished, taking whatever money they'd managed to grab. The police were looking, but we all knew they were long gone. "The insurance won't cover it," Eleanor said quietly. "Richard canceled the policy last month." Connor stared at his phone, still displaying the video of our father's confession. "At least we can prove it was arson." "And then what?" I looked at my hands, black with ash. "The store is gone. The inventory, the records, everything." "Not everything." Eleanor pulled out a singed folder, the store's original business plan, written in her own hand decades ago. "We still have this. And we have something your father never understood." "What's that?" "Each other." She spread the burned papers on the table. "The question is, are you ready to rebuild? Not for revenge anymore, but for ourselves." I touched the charred edge of her business plan, feeling the weight of legacy and loss. The store had been my prison, then my battleground. Now it was ashes. But maybe, just maybe, ashes were the perfect foundation for something new. "Where do we start?" Eleanor smiled, and for the first time that night, hope flickered stronger than the flames had. "We start with the truth. All of it. Together." The police found my parents in a motel 3 states away. They'd managed to grab nearly $50,000 in cash before torching the store. But their escape plan ended at a casino where my father lost most of it in a desperate bid to win enough for a fresh start. Now, 2 weeks later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, watching them being led in for arraignment. Connor's video evidence and Eleanor's financial records had built an airtight case. "Ready." Eleanor squeezed my hand. Connor stood on my other side, his usual cockiness replaced by something harder, more determined. My father's eyes locked onto us as they passed. "Still playing happy family?" His smile was razor sharp. "Wait until you see what rebuilding that store really costs." "Richard." My mother's mascara was perfect, even in handcuffs. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Tell them about the second set of books? The ones Eleanor's father kept." He laughed as the bailiff pulled him along. "Ask her where the store's startup money really came from." Eleanor's hand tightened on mine. Connor stepped forward, but I held him back. "He's lying," Eleanor said, but her voice shook. "He's trying to." "To what?" I turned to face her. "What's he talking about?" Before she could answer, the prosecutor approached. "They're offering a deal. Full restitution, minimal jail time, if they reveal everything about the store's financial history. All of it. Going back to the beginning." Eleanor's face went ash-white. "No." "Grandma?" Connor's voice cracked. "What are you telling us?" She pulled us into an empty conference room, closing the door. Your grandfather. He wasn't always careful about where he got his loans. When I took over, I cleaned everything up, made it legitimate. But the original money was dirty. The pieces clicked into place. Dad knew. That's why he felt entitled to steal. I built something good from something broken. Eleanor's composure cracked. Everything I taught you, Hannah, about business, about integrity, it wasn't lies. It was redemption. A knock at the door made us jump. The prosecutor again. They're ready to talk. All of you should hear this. In the small interview room, my parents sat across from us, still in handcuffs. My father's smile had grown wider. Tell them, Mother. Or shall I? Eleanor stood. I'll tell them myself. She faced Connor and me. Yes, your grandfather borrowed money from criminals. Yes, I knew when I took over. But everything since then, every dollar, every decision, has been clean. I spent 30 years making it right. By hiding the truth? My father's laugh was bitter. By pretending you were better than everyone else? I took what I deserved. You took from your children. Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. From your family. Family? My mother finally spoke. You want to talk about family? Tell them about Richard's brother. The one who disappeared after threatening to expose everything. The room went silent. Connor grabbed my hand under the table. My uncle, I whispered. The one you said died in an accident? Eleanor sank into her chair. He was going to destroy everything I'd built. The legitimate business, the community trust, your futures. I didn't. I never meant. What did you do? Connor's voice was barely audible. Nothing. Eleanor's eyes were desperate. He took the money I offered and disappeared. I haven't heard from him since. My father stood suddenly, making his chains rattle. There it is. The great Eleanor Carter's true legacy. Buying silence, burying secrets, all while preaching about integrity. I looked around the room, at my grandmother's guilt, my parents' spite, Connor's confusion. Everything I thought I knew about right and wrong, about justice and revenge, blurred. Stop. My voice cut through the tension. All of you. This ends now. I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. A video call connected, revealing a familiar yet strange face. Hello, Richard. My uncle smiled sadly. Eleanor, it's been a long time. The truth about legacy, I realized, watching their faces crumble, isn't what we inherit. It's what we choose to do with it. And I was done letting the past poison our future. The new Carter's general store rose from the ashes with clean lines and fresh paint, but I kept one charred beam exposed near the entrance. Some scars deserve to be seen. Ready. Connor adjusted his name tag, assistant manager glinting under the morning sun. Through the windows, I could see Eleanor arranging the last display, her silver hair catching the light. Almost. I pulled an envelope from my desk. Inside was my acceptance letter to Wharton's Weekend Master of Business Administration program, not quite the full scholarship from before, but a different kind of victory. Beside it lay the plea agreement my parents had signed yesterday, trading full restitution for reduced sentences. The bell chimed. Uncle David walked in, looking more like family now than when he'd been just a ghost story. The suppliers are all on board. Clean contracts, transparent terms. And the old debts? I had to ask, though I already knew. Paid in full. He smiled sadly. Your grandmother made things right, Hannah. In her own way. Eleanor joined us, carrying a leather-bound ledger I'd never seen before. I found this in the safe deposit box. My father's original business plan. She traced the worn cover. Along with this. She handed me a yellowed envelope, my name written in her elegant script. The date showed it was written 17 years ago, the day I was born. I always knew, she said softly. Even then, I saw something in you. The strength to break cycles, to build something better. I opened the letter, reading words written by a younger Eleanor to a baby she hoped would understand. To my granddaughter. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we choose to carry forward. Choose wisely. The morning light streamed through windows that had once been bars, illuminating the store we'd rebuilt together. Not just the building, but the foundation beneath it. Trust, truth, redemption. First customers in 10 minutes, Connor announced, flipping the sign to open. Think we're ready? I looked around at Uncle David arranging local artisans work where stolen inventory once sat. At Eleanor teaching Connor the proper way to balance a till, at the community bulletin board advertising local businesses, including Megan's Cafe. The security cameras my father had disabled now worked perfectly. The books were digitized, transparent, open to monthly audits. Every employee, family or not, earned fair wages and respect. Wait. Eleanor pulled out an old brass key. One last thing. She led us to the register, unlocking a drawer I'd never seen opened. Inside lay a single coin, the first dollar she'd ever earned. I think she pressed it into my palm. This belongs to you now. The metal was warm, weighted with history both dark and light. I could lock it away, let it become another family secret. Or I walked to the front window and placed it on display, right next to the charred beam. A reminder that legacy isn't just what we inherit, but what we choose to transform. The bell chimed again. Jason walked in, carrying coffee for everyone, a morning tradition he'd started when he helped us rebuild. Look who I found outside. Behind him stood a young girl, maybe 16, clutching a resume. I heard you were hiring? My parents want me to work for their company, but I was hoping. I recognized that look, the desperate need to write your own story. Connor did too, judging by his small nod. Come on in, I said, gesturing to my office. Let's talk about your future. Eleanor's letter crinkled in my pocket as I walked, its final words echoing. Choose wisely. We all had. And those choices had built something stronger than revenge, more lasting than justice. They'd built a future worth inheriting. The store's old sign still hung outside, but below it we'd added new words. Carter's General Store, building legacy, one choice at a time. It wasn't perfect. But then again, the best stories never are.